Right, here we go. Right, we are finally actually live. Um, so, I'm just going to thank you for bearing with me, and what I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to wait a moment to kind of see if anyone wants to join us. But we're live. Hello, Andrew. I'm assuming that is you, Andrew, from Facebook a moment ago. I'm just going to message Drew, and I'm going to message Aiden from the chat before, just to be like, I've moved over to Twitch as a way of going, as a way of kind of just making sure that okie doke. So like I say, we're on Twitch. That is correct. I don't want to bother you by sending you stuff over all the time. Mate, you're not bothering me. Genuinely not bothering me. Part of my job, I consider, as running Comedy Lab, is, helping out the students. One of my big bugbears is when I feel like people are just like, no, I'm only going to help you out when you're like in my vicinity. Winds me up. I think it's I don't know, it just don't sit right with me. So here we are. So we're back and running. I think that this will probably be better as well, because I'm hoping that it means that you'll be able to, see my expressions and stuff like that. So we'll just very, very quickly recap and then get to where we were. So the introduction is that laughter is a universal language that brings joy and lightens the soul. If you've ever wondered how comedians weave their magic to make people laugh, you're in the right place. So this is, we're looking at the mechanics of comedy, and we're going to be giving you the tools and structures to help you put it into place and help change your sentences into structure that will heighten your comedic impact. So right, this is the flow that we're going to be using. We're going to be looking at comic theory, comic tools, observational humour, exaggeration and hyperbole. We're going to be looking at wordplay and puns, self-deprecation, and surprise twists. So comic theory, we're looking at So there's this phrase about like dissecting a frog, which is if you dissect the frog, it's the same as dissecting a joke. The frog's dead and nobody laughs, and I don't particularly like that as a I don't particularly like that because I think it's better to look at it as a car engine, and you can take the car engine apart and then you can put it back together, and not only can you put it back together, but you can supercharge it so that it works even better. So these are the different comedy theories. Superiority theory, which is that humour requires a victim of the joke. And back in the 50s, 60s and 70s, this might have been groups of people, minorities, that kind of thing. However, as time has gone on, we have found that this superiority theory has not particularly changed, but has evolved with the times, where the victim or butt of the joke is often the person telling the joke, or it can be, you know, institutions, it can be like oppressors. So rather than punching up, it becomes rather than punching down, it has become more of a punching up type strategy, even though there still being a victim or butt of the joke, it still is relevant and still exists in 2024. Relief is the idea of relieving tension, and that is the difference between being funny off stage and being funny on stage, because everybody has got the ability to be funny off stage, but where it often is not quite grasped in terms of people who want to take their funniness off stage and put it on stage is the tension that is created, and we can create that through heightening effects, through structure. We create a tension, and Jimmy Carr and Lucy Greaves have got in their book The Naked Jape this idea of the first person who laughed, and it's, if you can imagine a person being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and they have got they are absolutely terrified, and when they're terrified, all of their teeth are showing, and this is very similar and uses the same muscle groups as when we're grinning. So we're creating a tension even within our own faces and our own bodies when we grin, but also when we are feeling tension of a very, very high level, not necessarily just your normal stress. We activate the same muscle groups. So if you can imagine, he's being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and then he's heading towards a cliff, so the tension rises, and at the last minute he dives out of the way, and the saber-toothed tiger goes over the cliff. Now he's still got all that tension, but all the things that were making him stressed and anxious then go away, and as a result there's a cathartic release, and that can go nowhere other than released as laughter. And we do that under relief theory. The idea is that we are constantly creating that tension and creating mental images in order to create that tension, and then we release it through our punchlines. Now, incongruity theory is the idea that two things are together that can't be together. So an example of that would be a vinegar vial in a restaurant, where it's got the oil at the top and it's got the vinegar underneath. So those exist within the vial together, but they cannot mix. And an example of that would be the sheep and kangaroo joke. What do you get when you cross a kangaroo and a sheep? You get a woolly jumper. So we have put two things together that aren't normally there. Humour is generated from juxtaposing things, in this case a kangaroo and a sheep, which you don't normally associate together, and then you end up with the woolly jumper as the incongruity the vinegar bottle that holds them both together. And authenticity, so this is the idea that the audience must be familiar to understand the comic conceit, and they must feel like you are authentically connected to it too. So when you present an idea to an audience, not only must an audience be able to understand a reference. So for example, if I was to do a piece about marathon bars, not everyone is necessarily going to know in 2024 that marathon bars used to be called Snickers. So you have to put that bit of presupposition in there, but also because of my age, there might be some doubt as to whether or not I am actually connected to marathon bars. So if I wrote a piece about marathon bars, I'd probably be better off writing it about the Snickers bar versus the marathon bar, in order to not only make an audience familiar, but also to make it feel like it is a familiar subject to me at my age. Okie doke. So next up we've got comic tools. So we've gone through kind of the car engine, and now we're looking at how do we put the car together. So these are the tools of comedy. These are ways of taking those sentence structures that you might use off stage and how we can maximise them for comedic potential. Okay, so the first one is the rule of 3. And this is based in the idea that repetition can create humour. Now, repetition on its own can indeed create humour, because not only do we see something repeated to a ridiculous length, whereas in real life it is very unlikely that that would be the case. But particularly in the rule of 3, what we're doing is we are not only repeating, but we are establishing a concept. We are then reinforcing the concept, and we then are often subverting that concept. Now, we can heighten it, but it is often subverted. Now, an example of this is the Englishman, Irishman, Scottishman joke, which is that the Englishman often introduces the concept, the Scottishman reinforces it, and then the Irishman often subverts it in some way. So in the case of the magic slide joke, you've got the Englishman goes down the slide and wishes for £1 million, lands in a bathtub of with £1 million in it. So we've established that the slide works, and this is how the slide works. You go down it and you say what you want, and you will get what you want in a bath at the bottom. The Scottishman goes down and says, "Oh, I want £1 million worth of diamonds," and he goes down and he lands in a bathtub full of diamonds. So the Scottishman has reinforced the joke. And then finally the Irishman goes down and says "we" and lands in a bathtub full of "we." So the Irishman subverts it and creates a new image that we weren't previously expecting. So that links into your tension that we were talking about before. Speaking of tension, next up we've got delay. So delays can build tension. This links into timing, and it links into the longer that you leave an audience with that mental imagery, the more that the tension builds. Now, the example that I gave before with from the Naked Jape, the caveman who's being chased by the saber-toothed tiger, as time goes by, we feel more and more tension, and in the same way that if we add delays, pauses, or additional information, we create tension in our jokes in order for us to then subvert. However, bear in mind that the longer that we build up that tension, the more cathartic the release has got to be. So next up we've got the twist reveal, which is often where we subvert the expectations. This would be where we have created a set of circumstances in which we are hoping to surprise an audience with. So an example of that would be what's one of them? It's a impression of a spider. What's one of them? It's a dead one of them. So you're expecting me to say it's a dead spider when I do that, but actually it's a dead one of them. So we've subverted your expectations and twisted in order to create humour. Next up, we've got the pull back and reveal. For anyone who I did that on camera. I did that on camera real quick. Tell you what, I'm just gonna increase my camera size just for this joke is not worth what I'm about to do, but it just occurred to me that I'm gonna be like someone might have been lost on that if they were just listening to the audio. So this is an example of a twist reveal. So what's one of them? It's an impression of a spider. What's one of them? It's a dead one of them. So we have created the twist reveal by, you'd think that I'm going to go, oh, it's a dead spider, but actually I've decided to go a little bit meta and go, oh, it's a dead one of them. Like I say, was not worth it for that gag, but it just occurred to me that was quite a visual thing, so I thought I would just make sure. So next up, we've got the pull back and reveal, which is a reframing of your initial premise to give new information. So an example of this might be, I love my hometown, where my best friends live. I call them up all the time. I say, Mum, Dad, how's the hometown doing? So in that, we've gone, you're expecting for me to talk about my best friends, but actually it turns out that it was Mum and Dad. So that's where we've reframed that. And you're also given additional information that you might read into that I don't have any friends, that kind of thing, and you give an additional information just through that reframing. And then callbacks is a reference to an earlier joke. These are really quite useful, particularly towards the end of your set. So if you do something that's particularly memorable, you can throw in a callback towards the end, and the audience almost go, "Oh yeah, no, we remember that." It's almost as if you've gone, "Do you know what?" It's very flattering of an audience because they're going, "Oh yeah, he's kind of acknowledging our intelligence that we can not only pay attention but also remember this set in order for you to add that new information later on." So next up, we're looking at observational humour. How do we mine jokes out of observational humour? So I'm going to go through a couple of exercises that you can try in order to do that. So I do this on my Twitch. I'm doing this on my Twitch in order to just because we were having some issues doing it through the Facebook Live, etc. But what I'm going to do is this will be on Twitch for I think about 2 weeks, a week and a half maybe. So you can feel free to come back to this video and it'll be there. But what I often do is I download my Twitch content and repurpose it. So I will likely stick this on the Comedy Lab YouTube, and I'll look at maybe sticking it on the Facebook, on the Facebook wall as well, for just because I did advertise this on Facebook, so it's going to be on there soon. But don't worry. What I'm saying is, don't worry about me kind of going through these exercises. And you're doing them as we go along. Okie doke. So Observational comedy is essentially observing the world around you. It's really, really, it is kind of the meat and potatoes of a lot of comedy. A lot of comedians will get into comedy through observational comedians. That's not to say that you can't get into it through more surreal means, but I feel like a lot of the people who I chat to have gotten into it due to people like Lee Evans, Peter Kay, Billy Connolly, that kind of thing. So it is really useful to be able to do, even if you're not necessarily an observational comic. And these are a couple of exercises that you can do. So just sit down and in an area, can be in your house, or it could be at the park, or it could be at work, and just look around for 5 minutes and just write down everything that you can see that's out of place. And that links to incongruous theory. Anything that's within the area that you wouldn't necessarily take the time to kind of notice, because you're busy, or you're thinking about other things, to be able to open up and then see the incongruences around you will allow for you to be able to channel that into your comedy, and in a way in which we were talking about authenticity before, but people who also exist within that environment may very well have noticed the same thing themselves, or if they've not noticed it, may go, oh, do you know what, that is correct, how have I not noticed that before? And you can do this in all manner of places, so like your workplace, your hobbies. Really good exercise for you to be able to do. Just literally just sitting down for 5 minutes and just looking around and going, what is out of place in this area? Because if you've noticed it, other people may notice it, and even if people haven't noticed it, they may well still be able to connect due to you pointing that out. Next up is people watching. So same thing, but we love quirks. We love, like particularly the British, we love kind of quirky characters and quirks of people. We find them very, very endearing, and particularly if you remember that the kind of butt of the joke has moved on. You don't want to be doing this with someone who could potentially be the butt of a joke, but if they are doing something that's incongruous in an area, or if the area is ultimately, a butt of a joke for them, feel free to kind of see what is humorous around the world. People love to be able to hear about funny things that you saw, funny things that have happened in your life, funny people that you work with, funny people that you live with. People want these connections. People go to comedy nights for these connections. And a third thing that you can do is commonality. Again, this is linking into authenticity. What is something that everyone seems to do? So this is more to do with kind of, again, quirks, but behaviour patterns. Rather than one person. One person who was kicking off, in the supermarket. Something that we all do. What is something that you've noticed that everyone does at the supermarket? Like, it could be putting the divider down between people in the supermarket. It could be the way that you can never seem to find a pen. Like, nobody ever seems to be able to find a pen. Maybe that's how Bic are making so much money, because everyone seems to put down pens and then never be able to find them again. There's going to be millions and millions of things in your life that you find that people do, including yourself, that you're like, why do I do that? Why do people do that? And there's no particular reason other than it's a quirk, and people love being able to have those highlighted for how silly they can be. So here's an example of an observational joke. The other day I saw a sign that said baby changing facilities, and I thought, no, I'm happy with the one I've got. Hardy ha ha ha. That was one of my very old jokes. I put a whole bunch of my old jokes throughout this presentation. I mean, some of the jokes I'm referencing are like older than me. But like some of these examples I've put in as jokes that I wrote. So another thing that you can have a look at is exaggeration and hyperbole. This is where you take a normal situation and you expand it and exaggerate it to the point of absurdity. So this is building on. It can, building on. It can be. You don't have to, but it can build on your people watching skills and your observations that you did before. You can take those situations, like in the park, in the office, and exaggerate them for comedic effect. I believe it was is it Max Clifford who used to say, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, but also don't let the truth get in the way of something that's funny. If something's funny, if you exaggerate it, I implore you to exaggerate it. People would much prefer to hear about it being funny rather than it being truthful. And in fact, there is an element of people going to comedy nights knowing that what they hear is not necessarily true. I remember doing a show a number of years ago, and it was to do with like a funeral and stuff like that. And I mentioned, and a bunch of family members, like I found out about a bunch of family members at the funeral, and I'm trying to move on. Someone in the audience said, "Well, tell us about that." And I was like, "Well, it's not very funny." And they were like, "Well," they said to me, "Well, we expect for most things to be said on stage to not be true." So, and I remember being like, I did not know that was the case for audience members, but I do think that is true. That people come to a comedy event somewhat buying into the fact that what you present to them is only a half truth. The common thing that comedians say is, "Oh, it happened the other day," and it's like, not everything could have happened to you the other day, but we suspend our disbelief in order to have a better time at comedy events. So don't be afraid to lean into that. Okay, so and I've put here, taking the truth further. You still want to, as we're seeing with the comic theory, you still want to have some authenticity. Like, you don't want to be lying, you don't want to be going beyond the realms of truth, but so long as there is some truth in there that you can be exaggerating, you should still be able to tick that like authenticity box. So the first thing you want to do is starting small. So we want to be finding that authenticity, that grain of truth. Okay, so you want to be writing down the situations. You want to be looking again for those quirks of human nature or human life, and then after you've done that, you need to be going, okay, next up, we've been going as part of this authenticity. It needs to still be familiar to an audience. So you don't want to be going too niche. You can go niche, but as a result, you may want to think to yourself, how much do I need to be able to relate to an audience? How much do I need to explain in order to get my point across here? If you're doing a thing about, like, I don't know, Warhammer or Magic the Gathering, people aren't necessarily going to know what that is, and that doesn't mean that you can't do material on it, but it may mean that you have to go a step further before you go into the material, just making sure that everyone's on board. So I kind of view when you're doing a comedy set as like taking a whole bunch of people across like a shaky bridge, and you're taking them across by hand, and the more kind of handrails you can give them, the more anchor points that you can give them, the easier it will be to get them across that bridge. So a way of doing that relatability is through similes, mimes, metaphors. If you're going to do Magic the Gathering, it's like Pokemon cards, but for like massive nerds. what you want to do is go, okay, what is a cultural point that people will be able to connect to, that I will be able to get my point across really quickly. I'll be able to say this. It's similar to, and with that, go, okay, this thing that I'm going to be doing, material on, how do I get that across in the shortest possible period of time? And similes, mimes, metaphors are the way to do it. And then finally, hyperbole. Like I say, do not get bogged down in details. So I used to host a podcast. It was like a comedy podcast about conspiracy theories, and there was quite a big comedian who does a similar podcast. And I said to him, "Do you have any advice for me?" And he said, "Oh yeah, well, with a conspiracy theory podcast, you don't want to get bogged down in the details. The moment that you get bogged down in the details, a lot of the humour's gone, because one, it's not necessarily that relatable, but also it's harder to exaggerate when you're going, and then this is how it works, and 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 now here's my comic premise." You've not built up that tension. You've not been able to release it cathartically, because people have been having to keep up with you in order to even be on board. And that's not to say that you can't make jokes out of those kind of granular details. You can make comedy about more or less whatever you want, but in order to do that, you must remember that it has to be relatable. And if people are struggling to work out what it is that you're saying, it's probably best to kind of retool or go, how do I say this more simply? And details aren't necessarily something that you can say simply. Okay, so this is a little example joke that I did. I was so bad in school, I was once predicted to get a G at GCSE English, and I said I didn't know it went lower than F, and the teacher said, "Well, that's how the alphabet works." So that is something that is based in truth. When I was in school, that is something that happened, but obviously the teacher did not say that to me. That was something that I made up for the purpose of the joke. But the idea of getting such a low grade, I was saying I didn't know it went lower than F. These are quite comedic premises that you can then heighten and be able to expand and exaggerate and add hyperbole, and it's still based in authentic truth. Okay, next up we got puns. Puns is playing with words. Now, there's a number of ways of doing this. Easy ways of doing this is you can write haikus. You can also start doing Pig Latin, and you can also do cunning stunts. Spoonerisms. So an example of a little pun that I put together here is, I'm reading a book about procrastination. I can't finish it fast enough. Badum-ts very much. But yeah, you can come up with all this kind of stuff by looking at points of phrase, like turns of phrase, points of view, little idiosyncratic ways that people talk, and go, okay, how do we play around with those? How do we Pig Latin those up? How do we Spoonerism those up? How do we take the expectation of the phrase? This is one of the reasons why the English language is particularly good for comedy, because there's so many gestures and ways and phrases of saying things that aren't necessarily direct ways of saying whatever it is, whatever point you want to put across, and we can then expand that, add the exaggeration, add the hyperbole, and take it to unexpected places. So how do we do a bit of wordplay? So a great way to begin looking at this is to start at the end. So with a lot of your jokes, you want to think of the punchline and work backwards. So with that example that we had before, I bought a book about procrastination. I can't finish it fast enough. You might be like, okay, procrastination, I can't do anything quickly. Okay, so you might then go, okay, well, what do people do? They get self-help books. All right, there's another bit. So I can't finish the book because I'm procrastinating, and I procrastinate slowly, by its very nature. So I can't finish it fast. I can't finish it quickly. I can't finish it fast enough. And then we move backwards. Okay, I bought a book on procrastination. I can't finish it fast enough. We've got double meanings. So there's a lot of idioms in, not idioms in the English language, idiosyncrasies within the English language, such as two and two, they and their, and their, red and red, weather and weather. So you might say something like, I don't know whether the weather is worth it. You might say, I need to see the film Saw. I can't see Saw until I've seen. I need to see Saw 6. I can't see Saw 6 before I've seen Saw 1. But I've not seen Saw. But I have seen Saw 2. That kind of thing. Think of looking at things that sound similar. So again, we've got those kind of double meanings, but we've also got things that sound similar, could be misunderstood. Again, a lot of this is to do with the tension, the introduction of phrases, and we create these mental images, we create the tension, and then we break the tension for comedic effects. A little example that you could do is when they sound similar but they change the context, such as Donkey goes to the doctor's because he's feeling a little hoarse. I do think that haikus are a fantastic way of building jokes and creating jokes. You don't necessarily get the finished product, but to be able to be so concise, because haikus are to do with being super concise and witty. So for those of you who don't know, a haiku is 5 syllables followed by 7 syllables followed by 5 syllables, and you can take any subject and write a haiku. But particularly when you're doing wordplay and looking at double meanings and things that sound similar, you can create a particular haiku exercise. So haikus are a great writing exercise anyway, but if you were to do a haiku about bats, such as vampire or baseball bats, you can then write 2 haikus, one about vampire bats and one about baseball bats, and then you can see where the similarities are, where the differences are, and what we can create in terms of our incongruence across the two, because you can't have a vampire baseball bat, for example. Another thing that you might want to have a look at is breaking down words. So you can take a bigger word and break it down. My example here is, my oven says hello to my food in short bursts. Apparently it's called a microwave. So we've broke down microwave as a word. We've turned that into micro, small, and wave, and we've started at the end there. So microwave we've broke down into small like introduction, and then we've gone, okay, how do we build that up? My oven says hello to my food in short bursts. Apparently it's called a microwave. So that's how we got to that point through using all of those methods that you can see there, starting at the end, looking at double meanings, sounding similar, and I'd like to say it's a haiku, but I'm not that clever. So next up is self-deprecation. So this again links into that superiority theory, and it's particularly popular in 2024, as it probably has come in, post the alternative comedy wave, which happened in the early 80s. That was kind of the beginnings of the shift towards more self-aware, more punching up type humour. People like Rick Mail, Ben Elton, Alexis Sale, that kind of thing. Do you know, I've forgotten that was in here. So there's that's me as a very much younger comic. That there is an image. Like, I took that because that's like one of the kind of cliche images that I feel like a lot of comedians do, and I did that as I was like, I'm being very taking the mick here. I showing myself as being very, very clever, but actually no, it just looks like you're doing it just like everyone else. But yeah, that's if you're gonna get yourself some headshots, microphone in hand, looking a little bit zany. Everyone's done it. Find something else to do. Share relatable experiences. So again, this links into our theory that we were looking at, and about our observations. It links in with a lot of the theory, and it links in with a lot of the tools that we've been looking at. Starting small, but particularly things that we can all connect to. So we can all connect to those universal human experiences such as love, death, taxes, jobs, commutes, school. These are just some of the things that we can look at, that we can mine, and although these are so universal that they have been done, they've not been done from your perspective. They've not been done with your comic mind. So don't allow yourself to think that just because school's been done for the last 50, 70 years as stand-up means that there's no more material on school, because nobody spoke about when you were in school. Nobody spoke about when you were at work. Nobody spoke about your love life. Nobody spoke about your home. So take those relatable experiences, and what you can then do is map on top emotions, because again, they're universal human constants that we can all connect to. Emotions, relatable experiences, relatable emotions. You combine those, and already you've got half of your job done, because that authenticity, that connection that people want to have, is already done by an audience. All you have to do is speak about something that is authentic to you. In addition, when you are doing this, it's still important to be relatable and allow for yourself to be the butt of the joke, because if you don't do this, it can sometimes feel like it's the audience that that could potentially be the butt of the joke. It links into that superiority theory that we were talking about before, but there's, that's a quick way of alienating an audience if you're not careful, by making them the butt of the joke. I mean, if there are comedians that have made whole careers out of being superior, people like Jimmy Carr, who's got this kind of presence of superiority. So that's not to say that it can't be done, but generally, to come at it from a subversive standpoint will give your material more longevity. So here's an example. I lost my purse. If anyone finds it, can they put £20 in it and return it, please? So again, if we break that down, we have used a universal experience. We've all lost things. We've all had things stolen. That kind of thing. The feeling that feels. So I lost my purse. You've got the connection of the experience. You've got the connection of the emotion. You're not necessarily. You could put in, I felt really sad when I lost my purse. But you can often do this just with your way of your delivery. So I lost my purse. We've got the universal things that we can connect to. If anyone finds it, they can put £20 in it and return it, please? So at that point, we've got the twist reveal. So we've got the subversion of expectations. So they might be expecting for you to be sad about it, but ultimately, you are telling them that you don't have any money and that you would like more money. That's the twist reveal there. It's more so a twist reveal than it is a reframing, like what we were talking about before. A reframing would be more, I lost my purse. There's no money in it though. So if anyone finds it, can they put £20 in it and return it, please? So at that point there, that would be the more reframing, that you're like, I lost my purse, but I'm not that bothered because there's no money in it. Another example, I went to school with a 20% pass rate, which means 3 out of 4 students failed maths. So again, we'll break that down. School, universal experience, not doing well at school, again, not necessarily as universal of an experience, but the feeling that comes with that you're not doing as well at school as you would like, or the anxiety that could cause. Again, there's your universal experience. And then again, we've got a subversion of expectations, which means that 3 out of 4 students failed maths. So you'd think that my delivery, I went to school with a 20% pass rate. There's a good chance that I am one of the people who passed. But then the follow-up of, which means 3 out of 4 students failed maths, you can work that out, that that's 25, 1 out of 4 is 25%. So I am also one of those people who failed at maths. The element of surprise is a powerful thing in joke writing. Now the next thing is timing. This is one of those things that you will pick up over time, but it is best to stick with your natural rhythm. There is a rhythm to stand-up. It can be a little bit singing, like sing-song in a way. It's it kind of follows this rhythm of like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, punchline, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, punchline. In fact, there's actually a clip of Sean Locke where he's basically calling people out on that, where he's like, I just speak in this rhythm, and then you'll laugh at it, because he's got people in that rhythm so much that people don't even necessarily listen to what you're saying. But if you can map what you're saying to that rhythm, it can actually help you in terms of your connection with an audience, because it shortcuts. But it's not something that's necessarily for me. Like me personally, I'm not a fan of that kind of mapping what we do to a rhythm. But if it works for you, it works for you. But my genuine piece of advice is just do it based off of your own feelings, your own rhythm and your own timing, because the longer that you spend with an audience, the more that they will key into your timing anyway. But it does still link into your tension. The faster that you speak, the more the tension goes up. The more that you are relaying information before that punchline, the more that you're ramping up that tension. And also, you can add silences and pauses in there in order to increase the tension. So here's a couple of tips for you to take away from this presentation, which is for you to be able to just take notice of what you find humorous. The best thing that you can do in your comedy career is to imagine yourself on the front row of an audience, and if you can imagine yourself on the front row of an audience laughing at material, you're already gone a far way into creating something that will likely be memorable. And if you can genuinely say, I am performing this piece of material and I would find it hilarious if I was sat there, there's a good chance that other people in the audience will too. And if they don't, and like I say, and you've genuinely, authentically said, and that your delivery of this material, if you were to watch it, you would find hilarious. And by hilarious, I mean like absolutely laugh out loud, funny, not just like watching it going, that's funny, that's got something in it. Like finding it hilarious. So yeah, if you can honestly say that about your material and an audience does not find it funny, that just means that you haven't found your audience. You know, your audience was not in that night, but they will be in another night. So just stay true to yourself and what you find funny. You know, and you can ask yourself, what do you smile at? What do you laugh at? These are clues to like where your sense of humour lies. Is there any stories that you find particularly funny that maybe your parents used to tell, that people used to tell you, do you have a story that you were particularly excited to tell someone? These here are the keys to being able to find what you find funny and be able to do. The first tip on this slide. If you can, have a notebook or a recorder and just make notes of things that people said or that you saw that made you laugh or made you go, oh, do you know what that's something that really resonates with me. It doesn't have to be a physical notebook, but this is apparently true. Quentin Tarantino uses a pen and paper because he thinks that the like mental processes that you use when you're typing versus when you're just able to write just kind of adds that tiny delay. So as a result, he writes everything by pen and paper and then like types it up once he's happy with it. And I think that there might be a little bit of truth to that. It does feel a little bit quicker. It feels like there's just like that tiny bit of not authenticity, but it just feels a tiny bit more truthful when you're able to just write it down as you think it, versus I think part of it as well is that when you type, you have the ability to delete versus when you're writing, where it's not as easy. And I think there's the potential to overthink things when you are typing, because you can highlight, delete, you can add punctuation back in, you can change things up. But that's more for your further down the line processes. That's for when you are, like I say, when Quentin Tarantino's got the meat on the bones of his script that he can then come back. So I sometimes say to my students, if you've ever seen an artist's sketch pad, it's like it's full of like scribbles and smudges that they eventually will go over with a pen and rub out the all those smudges. And it's the same thing, because we only see comedy at its end point. We only see that drawing when it's made out of pen, but when it's been done in pen, should I say. But us as comics, when we craft it, we're going through that messier stage that you don't necessarily always see in the artist's sketchpad. Number 4, keep a humour diary or a journal. So apparently Peter Kay's like an epic journaler. A lot of his material that he did for his, I think it was the Tour That Didn't Tour, was found from a lot of his journals. I think he does that just in general, but for his previous shows. But because he's constantly writing stuff down and keeping notes of everything, it meant that when it came to doing his it might have been the Mum Needs Bungalow tour, but he was able to look back through his journals and go, okay, what are all these ideas that I can then take and apply all this methodology to. So the next thing is, to your memory and emotion is as real as the actual event. So what's meant by this is when you remember things, your mind can't really tell the difference between what's happening now and what is memory. And when you remember something, it releases the same endorphins that it did at the time. So if you're thinking back to things for comic potential, don't forget to take note of how you felt, what endorphins were released at that time, because that will allow for you to do that emotional mapping that we were talking about before, that helps with authenticity. So if you think back to something that you think, yeah, that's got comedic potential, that's an everyday scenario, a universal human constant that we can connect to. Also remember that whilst you're thinking about it, the emotions that are attached to it will add to that authenticity. And the next thing is to search for the happiness in others, because again, as part of that universal human connection, what's creating joy and comedy for other people will likely be something that you can tap into using these methods in order to further connect with an audience. So this is the conclusion of the webinar. I want for you to remember to experiment. You need to play around with these techniques, and importantly, you need to find out which ones you enjoy the most and which ones connect with you. We've gone through a lot of stuff in the last hour or so, and some of them you'll really connect with. Some of them you'll be like, my God, that's something that really works for me. That is not a sign that the other stuff's like rubbish, but that's just a sign that you subconsciously work better comedically using this methodology, and that is a sign that maybe that's a route that you should go down, at least for now, because all those other techniques, all those other theories, they ring true now, they rung true in the 70s, they rung true 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and so on, and they're also going to ring true in the future. The more that you play around with the methods that work for you, the more it will hone your comedy muscles and allow for you to be able to revisit the other theories, the other tools, the other practices later on down the line. You might find that actually that will allow for you to find new ways of exploring comic potential. If you write a piece about The Office that's really relatable, and you've got all that emotional mapping over the top of it, and you're really happy with it, but then you go, okay, how do I continue to expand on that? Well, maybe you should look at doing some rule of 3. Maybe you should look at adding some tension to it. But that's not something that you necessarily have to do now. That's something that you can do in the future once you get a little bit more comfortable with your material. Remember that humour's subjective, so you need to write what you think is funny, and the chances are that other people will think that this is funny too. But even if they don't, if you're doing something that is truthful to you and connects with you, you know, anything else that happens is a bonus. Take risks. Try and take creative risks whilst you're writing your jokes. The more that you take a risk, the higher likelihood you have of it taking off. So, I mention this a lot in my workshops. Big person that I am influenced by is Peter Brook, who came up with this idea of deadly theatre, which is this idea that if you do a piece of theatre expecting it to work, like expecting it to not work, should I say, you will... there'll be like a certain amount of like nervous energy that goes into it that heightens everything and just creates that extra spark of creativity. But if you go into something expecting it to work, that spark of creativity isn't there. So the more creative risks you can take, the more chance you have of adrenaline and a little bit of a sense of wonder. And the more of that you have, the more that comes through, and the more that you have of that, the more an audience will connect to that, because again, there's a human universal constants that we all experience, and if we see that in someone else, we often use that as a point of connectivity. And have fun with it. Just take some of these methods and just go, do you know what, I'm gonna give a go of doing a bunch of haikus tomorrow. I'm gonna do a little bit of free writing tomorrow. So free writing's where you go, okay, I'm just gonna write on one subject for like 20 minutes, and I'm just gonna write every single thing that I think of on that subject. I'm gonna try some twist reveals. I'm gonna try some pullback and reveals. I'm gonna test out putting a callback at the end that I like seeded at the beginning, and just see what happens. Because generally, the more of that you do, it also links into the taking risks and that little spark of creativity. Thank you for joining us on this with Comedy Lab. We do have some in-person workshops. We've got like one space left on our April events, so if you want to get on that, please do. I put that little QR code there because I'm launching something soon called Comedy Lab Opportunities. Comedy Lab Opportunities Hub, where I'm going to be putting like bits of like competitions and stuff that you can like go for, that you can use these skills and apply for, like script writing competitions and like playwriting things. And when like commissions come up, I'm going to be putting stuff like that in there, and I'm probably going to be doing that like once a month, maybe just sending it out as a way of reconnecting with the people who engage with my online stuff, but also the people who engage with our in-person stuff. On that note, we've got an improv course that we're launching. We've also got which comes with a little showcase. We're going to be experimenting with doing some showcases, and I also do one-to-ones. I do those online and in person, so please do get in touch with that. If you're interested in anything, if you're interested in us doing, we're also looking at doing stuff like if you would like a workshop in your place of work or your sector, we're also experimenting with that, making tentative kind of steps forward with that. So again, please do get in touch with any of your inquiries. info@comedylab.co.uk. On the Comedy Lab website, I've got the Comedy Lab book, which has got like loads of hints and tips, which is for sale on Amazon. I've got the Comedy Lab prompts book, which again is on Amazon, and that's got 200. So for the last 5 years, I've been running a group called Admin Writing Encouragement, which is on Facebook, and I took the 200 most engaged with prompts, and I put that in a little book, and I put that out on Amazon, which also comes with some instructions for how to do some free writing exercises. But thank you for watching. I hope it's been really useful. Like I say, I'm going to be putting this it's on Twitch right now, and and I'm going to be putting on some other channels soon. But thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.